So we're going to take a little bit of a detour from our IAC updates. One thing that to extend what Tom Daly was talking about related to 1.24. I can do this. It's fine. Is that good? All right. So I wanted to discuss the 1.24 IAC improvements so that we can support the current release of Kubernetes and the 14.1.0 effort. Tom did a lot of work on the ingresses for supporting the version 1 of the ingress API on Kubernetes, which with 1.24, the support for the beta ingress has been completely removed. So that has been the lion's share of the work is having to deal with ingress issues. So Sam is here to kind of talk about the overall effort for the V14 release. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happened in the IAC to support that. So do I want to introduce? Oh, I'm David Fry from Info-Text. Sorry, I should have started there. And Sam is also from Info-Text with me. So, and you've met and seen him in various presentations. So
thank you, David.
I'm going to change places with you.
Thank you, David and Tom. David and Tom, and of course, as Simeon mentioned earlier, thanks for leading this sandbox infrastructure workstream and having this whole time dedicated to infrastructure and related topics is great. So when we saw the walk the loop title on day one, then we thought about, okay, we'll try to title our topics in similar way, like inside the loop, to look at the module loop internals. And then for this session, we thought spinning up the loop or run the loop. So we thought, okay, we'll look at two things. So we worked with the Modulo Foundation and Gates Foundation to get their approval for running a sandbox on AWS Modulo. It's great to have. I think ideally we should have all the major platforms like GCP and AWS and Azure. It was great to hear from Tom about having a deployment on Azure. AWS has been one of the, I think, the systems we've had from the beginning support for. And then we look at the work done for V14 as well. So when I was discussing with Simeon and Modulo Foundation on a sandbox for Modulo, so we have Miniloop, we have the testing toolkit, and there are places where we use that for hackathons and workshops. But we also thought we need a sandbox which can be made available for workshops and sandboxes in the future. For example, the PASP bootcamp we had recently, and it can be used by demonstration purposes for demonstrating Modulo use cases by Modulo Foundation staff or other Modulo advocates. And while we were discussing that, there were a couple of things we wanted to discuss. We needed some time from some experts who could deploy Modulo using ISC, and then the running cost of Modulo on AWS itself. Modulo Foundation and Gates Foundation supported us with that. So we were able to use an ISC-based Modulo deployment initially with version 13.10. So we have several experts, Oscar and his team, David, who work with David Fry, who were actually able to deploy Modulo in a matter of hours. I think if we give them the requirements, we get a Modulo deployment in 2 to 4 hours with a validated like golden path test run and everything. So we were able to do that. It was very quick and efficient. It is there right now, but there are several constraints. I think we'll touch on the roadmap. What we wanted to do was in the roadmap, we'll see we want to find out a way like a self-service portal or some kind of easy way to make it accessible for a group of users. Right now, someone has to create security profiles and make it accessible so that they can log on to a virtual VPN and then make use of the Modulo APIs using testing toolkit or something running locally. So that is one of the roadmap items. And then we want to refresh this periodically to serve as a test bed or to run the latest Modulo and IAC releases to make it available and make sure it's working as well. One other thing can be done as well is we can have some support for this sandbox itself when we know that there are demonstrations or hackathons happening. With that, I'll pass on to David to look at the details on V14 support. Thank you, David.
So as Sam mentioned, we started off with a V13 release in the sandbox. And what we did is we took that that environment, the tenancy that runs that environment, we created another environment for the purposes of testing the V14.1 release. So this is a development release. It hasn't been finalized, but we worked with Miguel and VJ. And then we've mostly, as I mentioned, the changes. Did I do something or that? Okay. So anyway, the changes, as I mentioned, relate to ingress. Ingress support is something that is baked into most of the charts, and some charts have taken longer to upgrade their support for the version 1 ingress. So it was a trial and error approach to looking at the charts that we don't just use Mojoloop, we use a lot of third-party charts. So it is a trial and error. So the overall process was to use the new chart, which uses the work of Miguel and Tom from Mojoloop, bring that in with the rest of the third-party components, test everything. There were some upgrades to the ingress controllers that we needed to do as well. And the TTK, running the TTK within the pipeline also needed some work, and thanks to VJ for doing that. So the status is right now that we have an environment, the sandbox environment has been upgraded to the latest release of IAC, which is V2.3.0. It has support for 1.24 Kubernetes and the V14.1 development release. I think I might finish before you guys get the screen back up. Let me see my last slide, Simeon, so I can just talk to it while you're doing that. Oh, that was a thank you slide, so there was no reason. So I think we have time for questions if anybody has some.
There it is.
Oh, okay, thank you, Simeon. Yeah, as I mentioned, we are upgrading 1.22 to 1.24 Kubernetes. Then obviously as I mentioned a few times, it's the Ingress V1 changes that across the Mojoloop and the third-party components that need to be addressed. We had to get newest versions of the Ingress controllers from Nginx to support the V1 changes, TTK changes, and then just a summary. So we have a V.2.3.0 release. That's not the main branch. That is off of a feature branch for supporting a new version of KubeSpray, which is how we build the clusters, that is upgraded to support the 1.24 version. So again, that's the summary. If there's any questions for either Sam or myself. Great.
David,
Warren.
why is this important to anyone?
So, well, the support for the latest version of Kubernetes, or I should say the current release of Kubernetes, was considered to be a critical issue for the community, and that is the driver for this work, and obviously that makes the amount of time before the next end of life version of Kubernetes comes out gives us some more runway. But Sam, you have any other thoughts on?
Yeah, on the other side, having a sandbox, I think, was one of the things the Modular Foundation wanted for a long time, not something that's temporary, but a long running sandbox that's maintained and deployed with all the security mechanisms, which goes above the level of the testing toolkit and the mini loop. And then this can open up the door for many possibilities, like, for example, potential DFSPs or implementers trying things out with Modular APIs, the SDKs. I think this opens the door and opportunity for that. We can only build on this. So thank you. Yeah.
Supporting the adoption.
Making adoption easier,
Yes.
better. Yeah, thanks. And somebody else is going to tell us about what all the good stuff is in 14.1, right?
Yes,
Okay,
that's coming up.
we wait with bated breath. Thank you.
Excellent.
Any other question? Right. Thank you, guys. A round of applause for them. I just do want to take a minute to reiterate a point that may be worth glossing over, maybe worth emphasizing. A lot of times, those of you who are on Slack, you've seen a problem where people join Slack and their question is, I'm running into trouble installing Mojaloop. If you've noticed over the last 2 PIs, that problem has significantly dropped because of Miniloop and the work David Fry and team have done for infrastructure as code. So I think they deserve a round of applause for that. So thank you so much to that team. You have earned yourselves a 25-minute break. So we will take a 25-minute break. That's a good time for you to test out Miniloop, possibly. And then we'll be back with Brian Schneider, who I believe is on Zoom somewhere, or he'll join us, and David Fry to talk about Mojaloop on-prem and then Mojaloop on Microsoft Azure. So we're still sticking with the infrastructure theme for the next 2 sessions. So let's take a 24-minute break. Let's be back in the room by 11:30. Thank you very much, everyone.